I'm Lori Postal, and I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me a number of years ago in my work life. So I was a girl who always colored within the lines. I was very compliant and a proper young lady growing up, my mother having sent me to etiquette school where I learned how to eat an olive and hold a teacup and wear gloves and introduce people. I always did what was expected of me, saying yes and, of course, to requests, completing all my homework, and overall I was considered a Goody-Two-Shoes, for those of you who remember that phrase. Since I was an easy kid, I don't ever remember being told no. It was just not something that was in my vocabulary, and I didn't have a lot of experience with it. So about 25 years ago, and no longer a Goody-Two-Shoes, I found myself working at Duke, and I had a significant dilemma. As director of nursing, I reported to Dr. John Anderson, who was the chief medical officer at the time. He and I had registered for a medical conference in New Orleans 4 months from now in advance. And he asked me to book 2 hotel rooms, but he would stay only at the Monteleone Hotel. Well, I didn't really care where we stayed. I said that was fine. So I called the Monteleone Hotel, and I said I'd like 2 rooms for these dates several months from now. And the reservation agent told me no. I'm like, no? What do you mean no? She says, well, all of our rooms are booked. I said, it's 4 months from now. How could all your rooms be booked? She says, well, there is a citywide convention coming to town, and all of the larger hotels have all of their rooms blocked for attendees at the conference. I'm like, well, okay, fine, thanks. So I go back to John, and I tell him, we're going to have to find someplace else to stay. The Monteleone doesn't have any rooms. And he said, no. I'm like, what do you mean, no? He's like, no, that's unacceptable. You need to figure it out. Now, I know that the Monteleone Hotel is an old historic hotel with lots of white marble, but really there's plenty of other hotels in town. But the Monteleone, he said it had to be, so okay. So I called the hotel back and I said, what is that citywide convention that you all are having? And she said, it's the workboat show. I'm like, what's that? And she said, well, like working boats, like fishing boats and trawlers and barges and tugboats. I said, oh, yes, of course. Well, actually, we're going to that conference. She says, oh, that's lovely. You'll have a great time. I said, but I need 2 rooms at your hotel. And she said, oh, no, dear, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work like that? She said, well, all the registrations are handled by convention services in town, registering for the meeting and booking rooms. I'm like, okay. So my next call is to convention services. Get a lovely registration assistant on the phone. I said, my boss and I want to come to the workboat show. She said, great. Be glad to have you. She takes our demographic information, name, address, area code, everything that we needed, email address. And then she said, what is your contribution to the industry? I'm like, I beg your pardon? She said, well, are you a captain of a ship? Oh, no, I said, I'm not a captain. Are you a deckhand? No, I'm not a deckhand either. Well, you must be an owner then. I'm like, no, not an owner. So she says, are you a vendor? Well, I'm running out of options then. So I said, yes, we're a vendor. She said, excellent. And what is your product? I'm like, product? She says, yes, what do you manufacture? What do you bring to the table? I said, anchors. She said, anchors, really? I'm like, well, yes, anchors. Every boat has to have an anchor. She said, well, that's true. I said, well, we manufacture the anchors. She says, that's wonderful. We've never had an anchor producer before. What is the name of your company? Name of my company? I'm thinking, John Anderson, I say Anderson Anchors. Anderson Anchors it is, okay? Glad to have you with us. Takes the rest of the information, pay $85 registration fee for each of us, and then she says, is there anything else that I can help you with? And I say, yes, I need 2 rooms at the Monteleone Hotel. And she says, happy to oblige. So we get our 2 rooms to stay in. So the following week, we get our packets, our ID badges, literature, maps, places to visit, and tickets to the complimentary fish fry. I mean, it did cost Duke $170 to register the 2 of us, the whole department. Had a really big laugh over it. So 4 months later, we actually go to New Orleans. We skip the workboat show. We don't go to the convention services or see any of the vendors there. But on the last night, instead of eating more beignets, po' boys, or shrimp gumbo, we put our badges on and we go to the free fish fry. And every year thereafter, we receive a packet, each of us, from the International Workboat Show, inviting us to attend as Anderson Anchors. I did color outside the lines for this event, but I was really gratified when at my retirement party, John Anderson from Anderson Anchors retold this story, complimenting my resourcefulness and not taking no for an answer. Thanks.